imagine a car so terrifying, so drenched in death and darkness, that it is widely believed to have inspired Stephen King to write one of his most chilling novels. This is the Golden Eagle, a 1964 Dodge 330 limited edition, and according to the legend that has followed it for decades, this car has been linked to the deaths of at least 14 people. Now I know what you are thinking. Another cursed car legend? People exaggerate. Stories grow. I thought the same thing, until I actually looked into it. In 1983, Stephen King published Christine, a possessed car that hunted people down and could not be destroyed. John Carpenter turned it into a film that same year. Audiences were terrified. The Golden Eagle is widely believed to be the car that inspired Christine. And when you hear what it allegedly did, Christine starts to look like a bedtime story. It started as a simple police patrol car in Old Orchard Beach, a quiet coastal town in Maine, the kind of place where nothing terrible is supposed to happen. And from the moment it hit the streets of Old Orchard Beach, the deaths allegedly began. And that is exactly where Chapter 2 takes us. Old Orchard Beach, Maine, a small seaside town on the coast with a population just under 9,000. And in 1964, the police department of this tiny town made a routine purchase. A brand new 1964 Dodge 330 limited edition. They called it the Golden Eagle. Nothing unusual, just a cop car in a quiet town. But then the officers started driving it. Each of the 3 officers who drove the Golden Eagle died. Not in the car. All 3 officers took the lives of their families before ending their own. 3 separate tragedies, all in a town of just under 9,000 people. And here is the detail that I cannot stop thinking about. Not one of them died inside the car. They all went home first, to their families, and finished it there, like whatever was in that car had already done its work long before they walked through their front doors. After the 3rd officer, the department decided they had seen enough. They got rid of the car. They did not destroy it. They just quietly passed it on. And that decision would turn out to be everybody else's problem. The car passed from the police department to a man named Dr. LaRochelle, from Dr. LaRochelle to an elderly local man, and from that elderly man to Kenneth Ricker Allen, a used car salesman at Marcotte Motors on Saco Avenue in Old Orchard Beach. It seemed nobody was willing to keep it for long, until it reached the Allens. By the time it reached the Allens in 1975, locals had already dubbed it the world's most haunted car. Kenneth had a daughter named Wendy, and she was not the kind of person to be scared off by a reputation. She described herself as the one and only sea witch of Old Orchard Beach, a dark fantasy author, a woman who collected haunted cars, decorated them with rhinestones and teddy bears, and drove them to car shows across the country. To her, the Golden Eagle was not a burden, it was a prize. But the car was not entirely at peace, even with the Allens. Wendy recalled incidents where the car would randomly open its doors while driving, release the seatbelts on its own, or jam the steering wheel. Some of these happened while she and her family were inside the vehicle. She also reported sudden acceleration and deceleration with no input from the driver. Now there is a mechanical explanation for some of that, and it does not make the story less disturbing. The Golden Eagle was assembled from mismatched parts, and mechanics later suggested that its strange behavior may have come from that unusual setup. So the doors flying open? Possibly a glitch in the hardware. The Allen family drove this car for years, through all of it, and not a single member of that family was ever harmed. Everyone else who got close to it, that was a completely different story.
That car is possessed by a demon.
It's evil.
By the time the 1980s rolled around, everybody in Old Orchard Beach knew about the Golden Eagle. They knew what it had allegedly done to those 3 officers. And yet, some people still could not leave it alone. Throughout the 80s and 90s, locals became convinced the car was possessed by a demon. So they did what people sometimes do when fear turns into obsession. They vandalized it. Now I want you to think about that decision for a second. You have heard the stories. You know what this car reportedly did to 3 armed police officers, and your plan is to walk up to it with a can of spray paint? According to the legend, the car answered in its own way. Several of the vandals later died in horrific accidents. Some were struck head-on by 18-wheelers, and a few were said to have been decapitated. Others were reportedly struck by lightning. Now, I'm not saying the car called down lightning from the sky, but I am saying that is a remarkable number of lightning strikes for one small coastal town in Maine. Wendy Allen said the death toll linked to the car was 14, though she believed the real number was much higher. And then there are the stories involving the town's younger residents. In 2 separate incidents, teenagers crossing the street were struck by oncoming traffic, and the impacts reportedly sent them onto the hood of the Golden Eagle. Neither survived. By this point, you would think the story had reached its darkest moment. 3 dead officers, dead vandals, teenagers lost on the hood. But the worst chapter of the Golden Eagle story had not happened yet. That came in 2007, and it started with a dare. Around 2007, a young teenager was allegedly dared to touch the Golden Eagle. So he did. He walked up to it, touched it, and walked away. Weeks later, he reportedly murdered his family and set their home on fire. Now, this is where the story gets complicated, because the explanation given at the time was that he had become deeply upset over his parents' divorce. So which is it? A curse? Or a troubled teenager spiraling for reasons that had nothing to do with the car? I cannot say for certain. But here is what I keep coming back to. Neither did the 3 officers before him die inside the car. They all went home first, and so did this boy. The terrible thing never happened inside the car. It always happened at home. Weeks passed between that one touch and what he did. But in a town that had already watched people meet horrible ends around the same car, nobody was calling it a coincidence. By 2010, the church group had had enough. They had watched the stories pile up for decades. All through it, there was Wendy Allen, driving the car around like it was nothing. So they decided to end it themselves. One night, they stole the Golden Eagle right off the property. They broke it apart, chopped it into pieces, and scattered the parts across different junkyards and chop shops as far as they could get. Think about the commitment that takes. These people physically took a car apart and dispersed the pieces across Maine because they were that convinced it needed to be destroyed. They believed Wendy was using the car for dark purposes. They called her the Sea Witch of Old Orchard Beach. And they thought that if they could scatter the pieces far enough, the curse would finally be broken. But here's the thing about Wendy Allen. She was not going to let that stand. She posted about the theft online, and within 9 days, fans and supporters who recognized the car had tracked down most of the pieces and returned them. Some pieces could not be recovered and had to be replaced entirely, but the car was rebuilt, restored, back with Wendy. Now I want you to sit with something for a second. These people were so terrified of this car that they stole it, took it apart, and scattered the pieces, and the car still came back together. After the restoration, Wendy herself said that nothing spooky had been attributed to the rebuilt Golden Eagle, at least not yet, which is either a sign that destroying it and rebuilding it somehow ended the haunting, or a sign that the car was never the problem to begin with? That question is exactly what I'm going to dig into next. Let me start with the mechanical explanation because it is real and it matters. The 1964 Dodge 330 ran on a push-button transmission system with buttons on the dashboard controlling the gears through electrical connections and solenoids. It was innovative for its time, but also temperamental. So when Wendy reported strange behavior in the Golden Eagle, a mechanic would not necessarily reach for the word cursed. They would reach for a wrench. That is the rational explanation, and it is a solid one. But here is where the story gets genuinely complicated. Wendy has long repeated the death stories around the Golden Eagle, but she does not appear to believe the car itself is a literal killer. She has written on her own website that the haunted car story was started and maintained almost entirely by her uncle, Mervyn Bruce Atwater. She describes him as mentally unstable and says he spent years online spreading the story that the Golden Eagle was possessed. Hundreds of articles, story after story, website after website, all tracing back to the same obsession. Journalists who investigated the Golden Eagle legend reportedly could not corroborate the claimed deaths with actual police reports or news articles. So here is where I leave you. Either the Golden Eagle is exactly what the legend says it is, a machine carrying something dark inside it, something that followed people home, something that refused to die even after being chopped into pieces and scattered across Maine. Or it is something far more human, a troubled man spinning a story, a small town that needed a monster, and an internet that was happy to believe it. And the Golden Eagle is still out there. Wendy still owns it. Make of that what you will. The Golden Eagle is not the only car with a body count. James Dean's Porsche has a story just as dark. Go watch it.